Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Caderna podcast. I'm your host, Brian Caderna. So happy Super Bowl week. It would only be fitting if this month our special guest was none other than a former NFL star. I'd like to welcome Jordan Babineaux. Jordan played for nearly a decade in the NFL, mostly with the Seattle Seahawks and recently with the Tennessee Titans, before he became a sports broadcaster, currently serving as the voice of the Seahawks on television and radio. Since his NFL career, he's gone on to become an entrepreneur and a business executive, partnering with major brands such as the NFL, Toyota, Coca Cola, and more. His brother Jonathan played for the Atlanta Falcons, and since their careers on the gridiron, together they've created several comedy specials and even a movie called Women Thou Art Loosed. They've also created the Babineaux Foundation, which helps their hometown of Port Arthur, Texas, and contributes to lupus research. Most recently, Jordan's wrote a new book called Pivot to Win, which we'll talk quite a bit about. It's about how to transition through the various phases of life, always moving closer to your definition of success, and what we talk a lot about on the show here of wealth in its original meaning, a state of well-being. So you can check that out at pivottowin.com. Currently, Jordan lives in Seattle with his wife and 3 kids. Now, I'm sure many of my loyal listeners are saying, what are you having on the show? One of the biggest cowboy killers of all time. We'll get into that. You'll know him from some major plays that he made, often in prime time in the playoffs against the Dallas Cowboys. But even I can see past that for a lot of the great advice and tips that Jordan shares with us on this episode. And also, quick footnote, again, I'm recording here in Jersey on the East Coast. Jordan's over in Seattle on the West Coast. We're in the middle of a nor'easter here, so the internet did get a little bit choppy on my side. So please stay tuned if you hear us cut out for a quick moment or two, because there's a lot of actionable advice that you are not going to want to miss. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Jordan Babineaux.
Is going to require work and time and sweat and toil.
If money wasn't an issue, what would I be doing?
Don't worry about it. You'll figure it out.
Change is the only constant.
The Caderna Podcast.
Jordan, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me. Looking forward to spending some time with you and getting to know your podcast audience. And hopefully we can spend some good time together and they can have some great takeaways from our discussion today. So
yeah, you bet. Yeah, it seems like you've had quite a bit going on. So I'm sure we're going to have lots to talk about today. But what do you got? You're a football guy. I mean, what do you got planned this week for the big game?
Well, I'll be like Elvis, partying through a Zoom in terms of, having that whole football experience. But, just laying low. I'll be watching the game. I won't give my pick just yet. I won't reveal it just yet. But if you want to know,
that's what I was going to ask you.
I'll share that too.
Yeah, I mean, talk about 2 of the best quarterbacks going at it. I think this is definitely going to be a fun one.
Well, I think it's going to be a fire to high-powered quarterbacks, as you just mentioned, and you got a great that's exiting. This young superstar that's taking over. Should be great.
Definitely. It's funny. I just got that book, TB12 Method, and that was like kind of my New Year's resolution was to try and start actually watching a little bit of what I eat. I've always been on the workout side, but it's crazy. I mean, he is so disciplined and on point with like every little thing that goes in his body. You could understand, how he's doing so well.
Watching someone like Tom Brady from afar, I get to watch someone like Russell Wilson up close and personal. And you talk about a machine in terms of high level of success, mindset, the ability to envision success and then go out and do it. These guys are great at what they do.
Did you ever meet Tom Brady? Did you ever play against him?
Yeah, I played against Brady, but so I guess that was our only chance to meet, but nothing personal, just more through the competitive nature of the sport.
Gotcha. And you know what, Jordan, I got to clear the air just for full disclosure. Today, you're talking to a diehard Cowboys fan. And you killed us back in the day, man. I mean, I couldn't forget that.
There's a little love and hate coming through this phone call right now.
I know. I mean, what was that like? Because you had the big interception. I remember way back against Bledsoe. I think that was in 2005. And then most famously, for anyone else out there that doesn't remember this, and my fellow Cowboys fans, I'm sure do, Jordan, you had that tackle on Tony Romo that will haunt us forever, where we could have gotten into the playoffs and just kept on moving. What was that like? Can you take us through maybe just that one play for a little nostalgia?
Yeah, man, it was a wild card playoff game here in Seattle against the Cowboys, and one of those back and forth games, very close as you imagine play. It comes down to one possession or very few plays that ends up being the difference in the ball game. And Dallas was lining up for the go-ahead field goal, and I am on the left side of the defense, and my responsibility was just I'm the scoop and score guy. That was coming from the other side, and if we're successful and we block it, then I'm the scoop and score guy. I came upfield, and it was kind of one of those oh shit moments. Like, wow, did this really just happen? Like, and of course that's my responsibility. So it was even more intention that I had to and feel like I needed to ensure that we would stop them for offense. And I don't know, somehow, some way, a desperate dive and save to shoestring tackle to get Tony Romo before he got into the end zone, before he got the first down. That's right. It was one of those moments, and the crowd erupted. I think it was we went on to play Chicago, I believe, in the next round. But again, it's one of those plays, Brian. You just kind of like, wow, did that just happen? When you're in such disbelief. But it was definitely a moment that was a highlight in my career. And being from Texas, always have conversations with many, many, many Cowboys fans. So
I bet. Yeah, that was something. And it's funny when you watch some of those replays, and I think it was Grammatica, I think was the kicker at the time for the Cowboys.
Yeah. Yep.
And you watch that replay and it's like, man, if he just even got in your way or something, instead of just that little kind of nudge that he gave you, who knows, maybe for us Cowboys fans, things could have been different.
Well, I'd say Tony Romo went on to have a great career. I mean,
get
him now. He's just broadcasting and doing well in the booth. So
yeah, he definitely is. And that might be kind of a good segue to, what you're doing. Obviously, you're broadcasting now amongst many other things. And maybe that'd be kind of a good launch pad is when you were about to leave the NFL. I mean, did you want to leave at that point? Were there other goals you were aspiring to, or kind of was it just your time? Like how did a bit of that transition transpire for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, one thing about being an athlete is that all athletes at some point will become former athletes. And the thought behind, at least where I was in 2010, before starting one of my businesses, was to create a way for me to transition, pivot away from the game of football and walk into something else. Now, I didn't clearly know what that would look like or what it would, but I just knew that it would be an opportunity starting now to leverage the platform and relationships and where I was in the NFL, and then move into a post-career. And as we all know, a change is the only constant. It's the one thing that we can ensure, but it's the growth part of it that I see, and many people just normally have challenges with. And certainly in the book Pivot to Win, it's more so like how do you react to change? It's one thing to plan for a pivot, but those pivots sometimes can be unplanned. Before retiring, all players at some point feel, it's like, oh, well, I'm going to be doing this for quite some time. And it never ends the way you want. Like I certainly was going back for year 10. I was training in Los Angeles for the last several years. And where I was the last 4 years of my career, I started reworking on podcast journalism while attending Southern Arkansas. And I knew that would be a path for me after football. How long I would play football, I didn't know. And so I started that path of myself up for life after football by reaching out to local radio stations, going on air once a week, and rehoning and resetting those skills. And I think it was really just focusing on what was ahead, because whatever we focus on, it gets our attention. So
Sure.
So I just spent time nurturing some of those relationships while still, re-honing in on some of the skills that I needed to help set myself up for that pivot life after football.
That's awesome. So it was mostly like local stations, radio shows that you were just kind of retooling yourself from because you studied in college, journalism, right? Communications.
Yeah, and see, I mean, well, times are different now. I mean, we're talking. My last season was wow, it was 2021. It's almost been a decade. My last season was 2012 with the Tennessee Titans, and I really wanted to move into a space where, one, I knew that would feel natural to me. A lot of people would share with me just my personality and my ability to hold conversations with people, and make people feel welcome and a part of whatever it was. I'm big on inclusiveness. I'm a big fan of allowing space and time for people to share their words and give their thoughts, and kind of creating a floor for other people to have a voice. Broadcasting was just another way to do that. And, so I took it and ran. I was like, wow, this is a lot easier than what my initial major was when I went to college, which was computer science. Right. There's a story behind that as well. but yeah, that was the gist of it. I mean, I was just looking for, potential to grow, potential to expand, and achieve different results, different levels of success, life after football.
That's cool. And now, one of the things we talk a lot about on the show, and that many of our guests have credited, is their ability to network. That no matter where you're going, you're always kind of networking to some extent. Can you share a little bit maybe of how you were networking from the NFL now to getting kind of behind the microphone? Were these relationships you'd had, or did you have to actually go out and search for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's a little bit of both. Certainly with anything that you want in life, you have to work towards it. And I think just working towards it, sometimes can lead to dead ends, right? If we're not intentional about it. I talk about in the book Pivot to Win, a lot of the stories of just visualization or dealing with our current circumstances, as many of us are dealing with this, today. But having a desire to grow or to become certain, more of what we envision of ourselves, and creating a life that we want to live. One of the things I like to listen to is Earl Nightingale's audio recording and he shares quite a bit in his recording, but more than anything talks about we become what we think about, right? So we have this this status of where we are, but this desire to be something more. And then what's standing in the way, not only is just time in most cases, but it's also distractions and dead ends. And success is not a linear line, I mean, there's successes, and there's failures, and there's lessons and takeaways that we have to learn. And I think, more than anything, about not just working hard, but being intentional about what it is that you want. What we think, we become. What we feel, we attract. What we imagine, we create. And the goal is to feel it in advance, right? To put yourself in position before you're actually that person that you envision. It's really just like start becoming that person today, And
Sure.
And sometimes it's easier said than done, because most people don't have a real practice of what that looks like. But I think that more than anything, it's also an understanding as well, and really understanding the self a little bit better, the triggers that sets us off from acting or behaving a certain way, and understanding that moving to deploy some of those tactics and those different types of ways of dealing with certain things in a positive manner that'll help us achieve those goals.
Okay. And it was funny, as you were just saying that, it reminded me of kind of a memory I had from one of my first jobs. I was a waiter at a retirement home. And I remember there was a whole buffet line, and I was bringing back, all the different plates and dishes and everything that they had along the buffet line. And they had a cart in the back. And so one of the older guys, he runs out and he's like, "Brian, just use this cart. What are you doing?" And I don't know why it stuck with me, but he said, "Brian, you know what? You work really hard, but you need to start learning how to work smart." And that kind of, it worried me, because I was like, you know what, that's true. Like, I think anybody can just dig deep and work a little bit harder, but now to work smarter, you have to really start thinking, how do I get that edge, or am I doing the right thing every day that I wake up? So when you visualize, like you were saying, is that something that you commit to paper? Do you write that down, or what's some of that process look like on a daily basis for you?
Well, I love that, Brian. It's work smarter, not harder, right? And a lot of those lessons as a young pup, is like yourself, or at that time, or even like myself. I mean, look, I used to think working hard was the way to success, and and I'm not saying that you can't work, you shouldn't work hard to achieve what you want. I mean, absolutely, but it's about being intentional, right? And we each know people who work hard and achieve very little. I know, because
Yeah.
I was that guy. It's like, well, it's not the work ethic. I know I'm working hard. But for some reason, I feel like I'm still coming up short of, what I desire and what I want to do and what I want to become. A lot of those stories I share in the book as well. And, but for me, it's that visualization part, start with an end in mind. The measurement of, who we become in the process of achieving what we want will far exceed the reward of the achievement. And,
Mhm.
it's the journey that you have to be in love with. It's not sexy. It's not, I'll tell you,
Yeah.
I mean, it could be mundane. It could be routine. It could be, very disciplined in that regard. But, it's really about the journey that makes it all worth it. So daily, and sometimes, what daily, I write things out now. I mean, I've gotten to the point where I need to outline how I'm spending my time, and from this connection of where we are now to the future, is really this idea of what's possible. So one of the things I do, and maybe helpful for your listeners too, is, you remember vision boards?
Sure.
I mean, that's still a thing, right? I mean, people still do
Yeah.
that, right?
I
No,
did that as an intern. I remember in my first job, that's what we had to do.
listen, I'm one of those guys. You know what I mean? Like, I'll look, and I'm not a collector of magazines. I don't know, somehow, you know, someone will solicit me magazine, and you feel like there's some little obligation to purchase the magazines. Well, I use those magazines oftentimes just to scan through pictures of what's, different cultures across the world, and people, or just little snapshots of things that I desire or want to experience, or I want to eat, or any of that. And I create vision boards, like I have. And I haven't, like, I let it mature over time. It's not like, oh, I sit down for 8 hours and cut out and cut out magazine clippings and pictures like that. But
Yeah.
over time, over the course of time, you're like, wow, I really want that. Or wow, I want to see what it's like to eat food in this part of the world. Or wow, I want to go experience something in another culture. And all of those things are attractive, right? In the sense that you can attract those things to your life, and I firmly believe that. And I don't think enough people really utilize that simple exercise of kind of removing where they are, but having this foresight and this vision of where they want to be, and using imagery to get them there. It's very powerful.
That's interesting. And now, when you were in the NFL, were you kind of about this whole exercise with the vision board, or were you just kind of like a one-trick pony saying, "Hey, I'm here to play ball. This is what I need to focus on. I can't let my mind wander elsewhere," or did it naturally? Did you start to kind of think, "Hey, I want to write a book someday"? Like, what was going through your mind, at that point in life?
Brian, when I was coming out of college, I played Division II football at Southern Arkansas, and going to the NFL was it was a shot in the dark. I mean, I probably had a better chance to win the lotto. And statistically, that's actually accurate. A person has a better chance to win a lottery than they do playing in the NFL. And
I believe it.
It's true. I'll break it down for you here in just a second. But I always felt like there was more, like there was a bigger overarching vision of my life. But at 20, when I first came into the NFL, I was 20 years old. I had no damn clue, but in my own mind, in my own world, and in my own skin, I was confident that I had it all figured out, and not that I wasn't, I was, resistant to help or resistant to asking for help, but I had the, I can do it all mentality. I can figure it out. Here I am, this alpha male, at my peak level in terms of conditioning and the way I'm feeling and my body, and going into this arena, this gladiator arena of the NFL, where you're praised for that. You know what I mean? You're not praised for being a person who has high awareness of their emotion. It's just completely opposite. It's like toughness, it's dread, it's it's very violent, in a sense. And it kind of shies away from the human side of us as players, because we put this, this great macho suit on of resembling just that, right? Intimidation, competition at its highest level. But at the core, I wasn't addressing Jordan. I wasn't taking care of me, not in that sense, not in the human sense, but in every other aspect, in every other drive, in every other way, completely successful. What I didn't know, Brian, and learned this after, my time away from football within the last decade, I wasn't dealing with, a lot of the things that I've masked as a child, through my early adulthood, adolescence, and then it came back to me full circle when I did take the time to explore those emotions, those vulnerabilities, those different aspects in my childhood that I masked, didn't deal with properly, those feelings, losses, death, all of these things I looked at completely different once I left the NFL. But while I was there, no, man, you could have told me that, man. I was I had it all figured out. I'll share this one quote with you by Muhammad Ali. It says, the man who views the world at 50, the same as he did at 20, has wasted 30 years of his life. And, that's a lot of, those discoveries that I share in the book, Pivot to Win. And, I can't wait for people to get their hands on a copy, because I truly believe that is something that will help other people navigate change better in looking at my successes and failures and learning from them.
Sure. Now, so you're in the NFL for like about 10 years, did it feel like you just kind of buried your head in the sand and just went to work, and then all of a sudden one day when you were done, you lifted it up and just kind of saw the world for the first time like anew? Or, how did that happen? How did you address some of those emotions that you said were kind of hidden, while you were pursuing this career in football?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't feel like I buried my head in the sand. I just think that my level of awareness and my level of maturity, for that matter, was different at that age.
Sure.
At 20, just coming into money, my likeness and the things that I thought were important were very different than what I think is important now. I'm married now with kids. Coming in at 20, essentially a bachelor. I was single, and everything was accessible. You name it: women, money, drugs, clothes, trips, vacations first class meals, chefs, you name it, right? And I think that in looking at that, from understanding that 20-year-old person that I once was, I'll share this with you. I say that, but I'll share with you. I never took it for granted because of where I come from, right? And I came into the NFL as an undrafted free agent. I had to work for everything. Again, I played Division II football. There wasn't a chance, for Jordan to play in the NFL, right? And so it was about challenging myself, right? And it's about challenging yourself, challenging ourselves in our own way. And but it was also about growth, right? So while I was interested in looking at creating the life that I wanted, or setting myself up for life after football, or envisioning what the future Jordan would look like, there were certainly a lot of obstacles that I had to face. And in addition to those,
I was just going to say, if I could interrupt, Jordan, because I know Pivot to Win is a lot about transition. And it sounds like we'll talk quite a bit about that transition from football to business. But if we could take a step back, and like you were just mentioning, you were 20 years old, came into this world where you pretty much had whatever you wanted at your fingertips. For that first real transition, I mean, I don't know how you grew up, but did you feel prepared? Did you have mentors in place? Was there any structure? Were you ready for it, or was it just truly like a baptism by fire when you came into that life and that money and that celebrity?
Ready for it. Of course I was ready for it. I prepared for this my whole life. Physically, certainly. But here we are, your listeners, want wealth. They want wealth, not just in money. They want wealth in lifestyle. They want wealth in health. They want wealth in helping, in impact. I want wealth in helping other people. I want wealth in my relationships. And but that was the challenge. So let me give you a quick backstory. So I was raised in Texas. My father passed at an early age. I was 8 years old. It was my mom who raised 5 kids, 3 brothers, 1 sister, all 5 kids. We all graduated high school. We all graduated college. And in addition to me, my brother, closest to me, played 12 years in the NFL as well. So we grew up in economic ruins. We grew up challenged with making ends meet. We grew up on government support. We grew up in a church. We had great faith. We grew up always competing. My brother and I would compete at anything. Who can throw a rock at the stop sign? Who can throw a football into a trash can from 20 yards away? One-on-one basketball, a race around the block. You name it, man. We would. But what I didn't know is that I was creating this uber level of competition that I would soon step into and prepare me to become a professional football player. Now, in terms of the outside portion of it, right? So now, what about the human element of it, right? So the support system, understanding money, understanding relationships, facing the uncertainty of job security, the acumen of understanding money. I would walk into luxury stores and over, when now, here I am, a few years away from 40, completely different. Now it's like, okay, well, let's look at this rental property over here. Maybe I can help a family get their first home. You see how different that is, Brian? I mean, completely. But it's powerful too. It's not just about, hey, let me get this rental home and see if I can become rich in 20 years. No, help this family get their first home, and wow. I just had a moment there, Brian. It just nearly brings a tear to my eye, to be able to say that, but there's a complete shift and a pivot away from what money was to me then at 20 and what money is to me now.
And that's a beautiful thing. I think that is truly living out the quote that you just shared by Muhammad Ali of, changing your outlook on what's important to you as life goes on. So very cool. And kudos to you and to your mom with 5 kids, all graduating college. That is something else. That's awesome. And so kind of along this conversation, you mentioned in Pivot to Win that it's important to find people who will hold you accountable. And I would agree with that. Definitely. It can be a little bit scary sometimes to share your goals and kind of air it out to the world and then say, oh my gosh, I got to live up to this now. Who do you seek out to hold you accountable? And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. One of the things, Brian, that you hear people say quite often, and it's proven, well, you got one person who has this personal desire to achieve something great, but keeps it to themselves. And you have another person who achieves, has this personal desire to do something great, but shares it with the world or shares it with a friend, right? And over time, got this person who's accountable to themselves, but they've always, mismanaged themselves in a way. And I'm saying this is always the case, but just kind of for purposes of understanding this level of accountability, is that, I don't have to answer to anyone. I have to answer to myself, right? So if I achieve it or if I don't achieve it, no one knows, it's not like it's a big deal. But if I share what I'm after, right, now I'm on the hook to become what I said I wanted to do, right? And so it just, I think there's a different dynamic of power that I think we tend to run away from without the understanding of what it can actually do for us when we involve people in the things that we want. And, it goes back to, this young Jordan Babineaux at the age of 20 who thought that he could do it all by himself. But now becoming a business owner, also realize that business is a team sport as well, right? And even in the beginning of my business, I thought that I could do it myself, or I could figure it out. Well, eventually I became the bottleneck of the success of the company. It's like, well, you got to realize you only have a certain capacity, right? And at some point, you got to share what it is that you desire to achieve with someone who has that same level of passion and desire for you to win as well. And I'm saying, Brian, don't go out and share all of your goals with everyone. They're going to start rooting against you, man.
Yeah.
But what I am saying is that even where we are today, we can share what it is that we want to become. We can share our business plan. We can share our personal life strategies with other people who can help us achieve that. And that's important. It's important to the fact that the person who shares that is more likely to achieve those goals than the person who decides to keep them to himself. So, I like to create an accountability group to help me. I think it's important too. I mean, iron sharpens iron. We need one another. It's a reason that solitary terrible punishment that a person can experience, because like we're away from people.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Here we are today, going through the global pandemic, and there are people who are suffering through this. Mm-hmm. And then there's also people who are thriving. So again, I just think it's important because everyone's different. But the matter of it is just, number one, understanding that, and it starts by understanding yourself. And when we're at that level of that level of awareness, we can use it to our advantage.
Sure. Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with that. And not to sidebar too much, but I was just on Fox and Friends last week with my wife and my daughter talking about that idea you just mentioned of solitary confinement. Maybe that's not the right word for this situation, but all of our youth today, that they're kind of having that experience where they're not in school, they're not playing the sports, they're not having the interactions that they're used to. And it's frightening to think about as time goes on, some of the lasting effects that this could have on youth who aren't maybe ready for that. So it's true. We're creatures that need to be with one another and communicating with one another. And I know that was a little digress, but you have accountability partners. In our world as financial advisors, we have study groups. That's something that's very common in this industry. I have a study group with other advisors around the country. They come together and share what's working, what's not working, what are the goals for this year. Who are your accountability partners? Who's on your team?
Yeah. So, one, I like to challenge myself in ways where identifying people who, in whatever case, it could be, this person is strong in their community efforts. They do well in giving back and helping other people. This person is a great father. This person is a great husband. And in looking at all of the different characteristics or the different personalities that we possess as people, it's finding other individuals who are where you would want to be. Not saying that anyone else is perfect. I'm just saying something to reach for.
Mm-hmm.
Something to be ambitious and go after. I tend to focus on leadership. And look, you don't have to run a company or have to be an elected official to lead. We all have opportunities to lead every single day. Whether we're a parent, a spouse, or where we are in our work. But it's about finding a leadership style that you admire, or whatever it is that you desire to be. Finding that in someone that you admire, and then resembling that. I share those stories in the book Pivot to Win as well. But I think it also boils down to, and a main ingredient in that is commitment, right? It's committing to the person that you say you want to be, right? And not just for a day. And here we are. I mean, we're a month and a day into the new year, and many people started the new year with New Year's resolutions. I wonder how many of them have lapsed on their resolutions, because while it was exciting in the beginning that I wanted to be this certain person, or I wanted my body to look a certain way, or I wanted to save this amount of money, we all know that distractions happen, and distractions is the one thing that keeps us from achieving what it is that we want. It's those who are able to manage those distractions better are the ones who actually can reach that desired end goal. So,
Sure.
sometimes, Brian, I think the other part is actually getting clarity around what it is that we want, asking for what we want. So, it's, I guess you can look at it as a two-part process, trusting the process, right? I mean, look, I've used failure as a stepping stone to reach new levels. I've had setbacks, overcome those obstacles. But each obstacle that we overcome as people is another good mark into helping build resilience and persevering through tough times. Because you get through one tough time today, there'll be another tough moment that you're going to be facing here shortly. But when we look back at those times when we were faced with those tough situations, when we were faced with those situations of uncertainty, and we overcame them anyway, we build that resilience. And over time, facing those challenges, they don't become easier, but they become easier to manage. And I think
That's
part
well
of the growth in where we are as people is recognizing that we've already overcome several things, in our lives. And every person is different. Brian, you've overcome things in your life. I've overcome things in my life. But we're each going to face another adversity here at some point in the future. But if we look back and tap into this person that we once were, when we did overcome it, we'll see that we've already achieved it. So, self-doubt is one of the things that can handicap someone's growth. It's like, wow, well, I got this imposter syndrome that I think I can do it, but I'm not sure. How did I get in this room? I don't know if I can manage this title. Well, who is this person? I don't know if I can. And we start playing these games, these mental games in our head, these mental games in our head where it's like, wait, stop for a moment, take a deep breath. It's okay.
Yeah.
We've
already
calmed it. Exactly. Yeah.
You psych yourself out. And so a couple questions I want to have on that. The first one, if we could stick with the accountability partners, because I know in the business world, that's something that's such a popular topic. I talk a lot about that. For you in particular, do you have, is this a group text message that every day you check in with your guys? Hey, how you doing with this and that? is a formal once a month meeting that you guys all go out to get dinner? And what's some of the structure that you've implemented, with you and your peers to stay accountable?
I'm about 6 months from achieving the completion of my MBA program. And
congrats. Nice.
Thank you. Well, it seems like this is when it gets the toughest, right? It's right before the end. It's like, well, I'm almost there, but it's real tough. And yeah, that's usually it in everything. It's like, oh, well, I can see the finish. You can see the light through the tunnel a little bit, but this moment that I'm in is really, really tough, right? That's when you really got to bear down and kind of dig your heels into the ground. Yeah. But I share that to say, when I started this program, this was also a few years later, post football, where I actually began to really dive into this sense of being vulnerable and really answering those questions around what I shared earlier that I masked or that I neglected, and dealing with those childhood traumas and dealing with my emotions and dealing with understanding and getting a better grip on me, on my mental side. Like, mental health is a big thing that I believe really now there's a lot of conversation around, a lot of studies and a lot of people that are moving into that space. But Brian, I tell you, going through a change or going through a pivot, the mental part of that strain can be defeating. Here's what I mean. When I decided that I wanted to write this book, it was like, well, one, I was trying to identify the things that I wanted to say, the things that I wanted to share, right, and what that will look like. But internally, but I knew within that there was more things that I needed to personally address. And when I started this is how it all connects. When I started this MBA program, Seattle University is where I'm at, and going through this MBA program, the first few months of the program, we were forced to focus on the inner self. Did a lot of self-reflection, did a lot of mindfulness practices of understanding the things that made me feel the way I did. That's important, Brian, because if you don't understand the way you feel about certain things, how can you ever change it? So those triggers of one, how I felt, or how I, my thoughts around money, my thoughts around relationships, my thoughts around other things that I was dealing with at the time, I had to address. And it was so moving that it brought tears to my eyes. It was also so moving that I decided to write a 53,000 word book. But change, change is one of those things where when we're going through a pivot, we can tend to lose or a sense of ourselves, right? So here's a big pivot for you, from employee to business owner to entrepreneur, or moving locations. I'm gonna uproot and change jobs into a new city, or like many athletes face every year, now having to pivot away from sports, not just football, any sport, right? Because there's a certain level of identity that we walk with in our sport. But when we leave that, or we leave a relationship, when we leave that, it's like, wow, I don't have that no more. So where am I getting my fulfillment? And I share what I've identified as the pivot model, and certainly there's a lot of change models out there that help people understand where they are in their change. But it's also helping us, or you as an individual, understand how to navigate through that. How do I deal with the uncertainty of where I am in ground zero, which is one of the steps in the pivot model? How do I deal with that? Right. And it's reestablishing who I am, understanding my core self or the values. And if you're a business owner, or if you own in a company, it's, what is our base for serving our customers? I mean, everyone has had to pivot through this pandemic. Everyone has had to pivot, both personally and professionally, through this pandemic. And you see a lot of businesses are having to answer the question, well, is it time to close the door for good? And understand, or can we pivot successfully? Do we have a strong enough customer base to pivot successfully now and still be sustainable? And those are the questions that we all have to answer, we've been faced with. But I think when we understand that better and we work through this pivoting process, it's transformative. We're living in our purpose. We're meeting customer demand. We're not, having to strain in dealing with everyday life. It's now become who we are. So change is important, and change can be a challenging thing. And accountability group is one of those things or tools, or one of those strategies that we can all use to help us navigate change better.
Yeah. And it's so true. I mean, you got to keep up with the times. And I think there's nothing more sad than seeing a company that's been around a long time that, maybe the community or somebody relied on, and you always knew were able to identify that company. And then, in today's day and age with technology and the way things are going, they don't change, and they unfortunately just go by the wayside. And I think you see that so often with family businesses going from one generation to the next, that if you don't accept that change, you go by the way of the dinosaur. So there's so many good principles you've already outlined in this book. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about is you shared that, looking into mindfulness during your MBA program was very helpful to you. Do you meditate?
I do, but I just started to increase my practice, and I share this with people who've never tried it or experienced it, or who may not have a strong belief that it's actually transformative. I like to just start with something small, like go small, like 1 minute a day, and then get to 5 minutes a day. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, Brian, it's just hard for people to just sit still. I mean, we have so many.
It really is.
We have so many competing interests and so many things, distractions and text messages, emails, and social media likes and unlikes that's grabbing our attention, and we tend to pay more attention to the noise when all of that in itself is really a sense of practicing stillness. And it's where I want it. I mean, life just became so noisy for me that I just had to get centered, and I had to get aligned. Again, I think that's also one of the powerful things too. But go small. Like, just try sitting still for 60 seconds and then grow it into 5 minutes. So that's one of the things that I've been doing too. But I'm small. Like, I don't meditate. I meditate after a workout, or after reading, or after praying, or after some spiritual practice, and then meditate on it for 10 minutes. And I'm telling you, Brian, I share this. I hope your listeners are challenged to go out and achieve it. That it can truly change your life in a positive way.
I've heard it so many times, just like you said. Me personally, it's something that I haven't added to my daily routine, but it's something I've heard so much that it can be a game changer. So I will try and start carving out that time and make a concerted effort, to find some meditation time.
Well, I think it's, you just mentioned routine, right? And, being a professional athlete, one of the things that we had to develop, was a routine. And I think it's important too, in the sports element for sure, right? I mean, you talk about routine, routine simply is just a process of doing things that can help influence the result. It doesn't mean that you automatically successfully win, or you automatically have success, but it does give you a sense of control. And here's an example: a basketball player sitting at the free throw line, right? 2 dribbles, a twirl of the ball, shoot, right? A golfer, a pre-shot routine, any of those things. And, well, in football, when I had to understand what a routine was, right? You say, I always heard this one saying as a young pup in the NFL is, what's your routine? Right? I mean, how do you become a pro? there's some learning to be done. It's watching the veterans, the guys who've been doing it, longer than you. But it's not doing what they do. It's just taking a little bit from them, adding it to your game and finding your own. But in the sense of life, I tend to focus on the bookends of the day, how I start my day and how I end my day. Super important. Most important thing. Like, okay, during the day, things going to happen. I like to script my day. I can plan it. But there's also times when, we can't, every hour script, the random knock at the door or the emergency phone call. And we can find a way to mitigate some of that and kind of, compress it a little bit. But those routines in the morning, how you start your day and how you end your day can just those two alone can help increase your success and your level of vitality over the course of your life. If you don't want to script your whole day, I understand, because some people just like freedom. But if you script your bookends, how you start your day and how you end your day, develop a stronger routine, you can increase your level
having control
of success. You can manage it better. And sometimes it's just simply shutting off those notifications or shutting off or closing the door and eliminating those distractions.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, those are really the two probably only parts of the day you have complete control over, is when you wake up, what you're doing, and then right before your head hits the pillow at the end of the night. It's funny. I don't know do you follow Jocko at all? He's got his podcast, the former Navy SEAL.
No, I don't, but I have his book. Yeah, I have his book.
Because he shares a lot of similar concepts, and he's famous for always posting, when he wakes up at 4:30 in the morning, to get after it, early and often and get that workout in. Even when you don't want to, you do it. And in that same vein, I mean, what are your, if you would mind sharing your bookends, how do you begin your day and how do you end your day?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a strategy. Leadership strategy tactics is the one I have. I mean, I know he has several books. I have to look at my bookshelf. but Jocko is. I got a high regard for Navy SEALs and men and women of the armed forces. Like infatuated with them to the sense of their level of bravery and courage. And when I was playing, and even post career locally, I would go down and spend time with the military here, the Joint Lewis McChord base here, just south of Seattle, those
there's
guys.
A lot to learn from them. That's
but Navy SEALs is a whole nother level. Look, I kind of laugh at the fact that I tell my wife now, it's like, you know what, I think I could do that. And she's like, yeah, what part of your body agrees? It's like, man, my hip hurt, my back hurts, neck hurts, everything hurts, man. There's no way I can go out and be a Navy SEAL, man. He's not right now. I mean, maybe 15 years ago when I was crazy, but yeah, my bookends I start the morning really focus on me. That's my time. I'm up in the quiet. I'm up early, usually around 5 o'clock or 5:30. Every so often I do what's called a jump start, where I get up at 4 o'clock, just to get going. But that time for me is mind, body, spirit is what I like to say. And we can keep it as simple as that, right? So it's reading, it's working out, and it's some spiritual level of prayer, and that's my morning routine every day. And that's when I also incorporated the meditation piece. So at the end of the workout, I'll get my 10 minutes of calm and 10 minutes of centeredness through my meditation practice. And then, I incorporate different things, different types of workouts. Certainly they've changed over time. It's no longer lifting 250-pound bars and squatting 315 pounds anymore. I like to ride the bike. So you've all heard of Peloton.
Sure.
So I'm on the Peloton quite a bit, so I'll do that as a way to switch things up. And it's not that I love it. Trust me, Brian. I don't like long distance anything, but it's also the reason. It's also the reason how to do it. It's like it's kind of like if you gotta eat the frog, or if you got to eat two frogs in a day, eat the biggest one, right? Eat the biggest one first. Just eat that frog. Just it's like Jocko. I mean, that mentality of I don't want to work out, but you should.
Yeah,
I'll give you. I'll share this real quick, and then I'll.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll wrap. So, often have friends who are awestruck at my energy or that level of continuing to of activity, and then they say, man, if I only had 15 minutes to work out, it's like, well, one, like I hate it when I hear people say that they don't have 10 minutes or 15 minutes to do something for themselves. Because at the core, I like to share. If every day, do something for yourself, do something for someone else, and do something for the community. And, for me, whatever that is, for me, I like to take care of my body. Right. And people would say, they would share, it's like, man, I just don't have the energy to work out. But if you did work out, you would have energy, right? It's
exactly. They go hand in hand.
So, I know, right? So it's kind of it's just this crazy, the chicken and the egg thing. That
exactly, yeah. It's so true.
It's like, well, sorry, Brian. I kind of went off script right there a little bit, but man, it's like, you absolutely should, and even when you don't want to do it, you should. And I think that's important because, more than anything, we can do these small little things to increase our vitality, whether it's adding a little moment of quiet every day, changing our daily interactions, and having better conversations, and increasing our relationships, shutting things down, turn off the distractions, and then a wellness check. Where are you in your diet, rest, and activity level? I think those things are important too. Understanding how can we increase our vitality.
Yeah, and you just got to start, like you said. That journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And it's funny, you had me laughing because it's like sometimes when I'll talk with friends and I'm like, let's get to the gym. You got to get up and go. And they're like, I'm too out of shape. I'm like, well, that's why you got to go to the gym, so we can kind of start, getting in the right direction here.
Yeah, and that's the hardest part, right? Is showing up.
Yeah, definitely.
And here's a way to help people too. Now the gym is now in the base. Now the office, right? If that's a bike or a yoga mat and 10 minutes of practice or whatever it is, I think we just have to do it. And I guess there's no other way to say it than I like to say do it now. Like when you don't want to do it, I just repeat it. Do it now, until you're actually in the act of doing it. And just simple things like that are other ways to help get us going and help motivating us and really shifting our mindset, because it's not that we don't understand that if we work out, we're going to increase our level of wellness. But why don't we do it? So there's a big battle and conflict right there that all plays out within our mind.
Yeah. And one of the things I heard often that I always carry with me is you never feel bad about having done the workout. You never look back like, oh man, why did I just work out for an hour? But I've never said that in my lifetime, but there's been a million times I said, I should have just worked out this morning. Now I got too busy. Yeah, it's true. Just knock it out, get it done with. But so what does that take you to, just to kind of wrap that up? So if you start at 5:30 in the morning, mind, body, spiritual, I like that. Are you done like at 7 o'clock for breakfast, or how long does that kind of restart mode? How long does that take for you?
Yeah. Well, and then so I like to carve out 2 or 3 hours, right? And breakfast is included in that. By that time the house is waking up. Usually at 8 o'clock, I'm in the kitchen, cooking breakfast. And I've shifted the routine a little bit now to come into the office a little earlier, just so I can get out of the house sooner. But yeah, I include breakfast in that. We got to replenish, refuel. It's equally important. But even if you just start your day with a glass of water, it's like, we went through the whole night, we slept, we wake up, our mouth is parched, we're a little dehydrated, drink a glass of water. most people would drink coffee before they have a glass of water. Well, I mean, but we want wealth and health. Well,
Yep.
wealth and health is not starting with a cup of coffee. And I know people just need that fix. I get it. I understand. But look, I tell myself, I can't have coffee until I work out or until I've had that glass of water. So whatever it is that we can do to help set ourselves up for that cup of coffee to be a reward, then do that. And, I think that's also some of the things that can help us too in just our daily work, right? Like before I check email, I gotta read 10 pages out of a book. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is, whatever that trigger is, I think there's something that we can do to help us. And then whatever we want to do, it be a reward, So,
Sure.
That's pretty much the morning.
Got it. And then at night, just kind of while we're, getting the inside look at Jordan Babineaux, do you just kind of shut it off at night, or is it like repeat, like more meditation, more reading? What is that kind of like? Is it so routine in the evening, or is it a lot, quicker and summarized?
Yeah. So the evening routine, just consists of wind down. One of the things that I really like to do, Brian, is cook. I love to cook. I'm a Texas guy. My family has their own spices and seasonings. Like I get joy out of. It's a thinking place for me. And, some people like to run. Some people like to fish. To find that level of mental balance. Some people like to clean, believe it or not. But it's also important too. I had to realize that I can't spend too much time cooking because, I'm not getting paid to cook, right? But even though it's a joy for me, I still got to be mindful of how much time I spend doing it. Okay, so I just wanted to be clear on that too. But the evening consists of separation. So now it's different. My evenings consist of homework. I'm doing case studies on Ford and financials on Tesla. That having to understand how how economic value is added, or how a different company is performing. It's insane. It's insane the amount of work that this MBA program is really allowing me to.
Where are you doing your MBA at?
I'm at Seattle University. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Seattle.
Cool.
Yeah. So I live on the West Coast. I'm in Seattle. It's a great place to live. I mean, I know, Brian, you, like many people across the country, says it rains way too much in Seattle. That's only a myth. We tell you that to keep you away. But it's a great place. I mean, I've rooted myself here. I have a lot of relationships within the community, within the business community, and in the community of helping other people. It's awesome. Been good for us, and I really love it. So my evenings consist of just stepping away from the chaos of the day, and so around that 5 o'clock time, at 5:30 time, I love to eat with my family. Just because one of the things that throughout my new discoveries of understanding myself better was a practice of presence. And when I say presence, like if I'm eating dinner with my family, my phone isn't near me. That's what I'm doing. We're eating dinner. If I'm watching a movie with my wife, my phone is in the other room. We're watching the movie. So anyway, I like to create separation from time and spending time with the family. Just simple practice of presence. And more than anything, how hard it is to just keep your phone away from you. And if you hear that thing buzzing, you get this little shock in in your body. You're like, whoa, wait, who is that? I need to go see. My phone is ringing. Like, I had a little thing. My phone was in the other room, and my daughter went in. She went in to, I don't know, do something, or was passing by. She said, "Dad's your phone ringing." Okay, just leave it there.
Exactly.
But really, I mean, but it requires discipline to do that. And
it does.
Look, I mean, I'm not saying that makes me a better person than anyone else, but it does say that I'm very different than how people look at it and wanting to say what's most important to you. Well, what's most important? People say, "Oh, my family's most important," and then my job or career. It's like, well, I mean, is it really important? you really, I mean, you really have family time carved out on the calendar? Are you really there with your family, or are you at the soccer game, checking email at the same time, and again, these are just challenges that I think we all face, and it's, again, but yeah, so the wind down, we have dinner, shower time, bath time, bedtime, and then there's a little time where I spend with my wife, whether we choose to watch a show or we choose to just have a candid conversation about the day. And then sometimes it may require me to go back and do a little work, but I shut it down. I do shut it down because once 10 o'clock, I know it's far too late because the morning is coming pretty fast. And then it's wind down time. So whether that wind down time is another way to relax my mind by a few more pages of reading, or just separation from technology in general, I tend to do that before going to bed.
I like it. Yeah, it's that idea of just kind of keeping your head where your feet are at, that sometimes it can be so difficult. And I think that's the best invention Apple ever came up with, is that little do not disturb button that you could put on your iPhone. So,
Yeah.
I like it.
People
That was
don't
all
use
well
it
said.
enough, though.
It's true. It's hard. It's almost like it's intimidating. Like, do I click it? Because then I'm leaving the world.
Right.
But yeah, it's crazy. There's so much we could talk about. I mean, maybe just a couple of questions to kind of reach the finish line here. You talk a lot about in Pivot to Win, just not taking no for an answer, and just that perseverance that's carried you obviously quite far in life. So I just want to ask you if maybe you could share a couple examples of when you've persevered, how it paid off. And on the flip side, when do you give up? Like, how do you make that choice to quit, which I think it has such a negative stigma to it. But you got to think about it. We're always quitting something, or else we would never take that leap to the next kind of journey.
Yeah.
So can you share a little bit of, I guess, what would be more pivots, no pun intended?
Yeah. Well, if you want to achieve more things, you need to quit more things, right?
Yeah.
Look, Brian, I love to play golf, but to go out and just play golf is, I mean, yeah, I get it. I mean, we all need our little sense of sanity, whatever that is. But to go out and play golf, I mean, that's really a 6-hour day. If you talk about the commute there and back, 4.5 hours for the round, 6 hours. I had to get real with myself. And when I tell you I love golf, I love golf so much that I played golf in high school. People don't know that about me. I played golf in high school, still play it to this day. But it's also too, I think there's a balance of kind of knowing what we need to drive, right? And sometimes rather than go and spend 6 hours on a golf course, it's spending 40 hours or 30 minutes. I'm sorry, 40 hours, 40 minutes or 30 minutes on a driving range instead, or in between the day. I like to get up out of my chair and move around, every hour, just so I'm not stuck or constantly staring at the screen, or my body or my posture starts to waver, or my level of performance starts to drop, right? So I'll get up and move around. I'll do some stretches. I got a putter that I keep in my office with a little cup at the end. I'll just go do that for about 5 minutes and then move around a little bit. So saying no, Brian, too, in a lot of ways, certainly as kids, right? It's like, oh, well, mom says no, go ask dad, or dad says no, go ask mom. Or in business, we look at it when we're told no, it's like, well, I may need to go around, this, mid-level manager and go a higher level up, right? So, it's simply in that regard, like maybe you're talking or asking the wrong person, right? And so my stubbornness won't let me walk away without seeking a person who has the right yes. I mean, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the person who has the yes to what it is that I want to do. But I also think that in refusing to accept the word no is also refusing to tell yourself no. Like, don't tell yourself no, right? So earlier in the conversation, we talked about the imposter syndrome and moving pivots and moving through change and losing a sense of identity, or these battles and conflicting battles that we go through within our mind of understanding certain things. And then we play these tricks on ourselves, start talking ourselves out of certain things. Well, essentially, you're telling yourself, no, you're not good enough to do that. You're not good enough to meet this person, or you're not good enough to be in this position to achieve what it is that you want. And so, yeah, one thing from asking or seeking the right yes by being told no, but more than anything, Brian, I think what's bigger than that is refuse to tell yourself no. And sometimes it's a matter of understanding your own subconscious or consciousness around moving yourself into this position, even though it feels uncomfortable. And that's where the success and the pivots start to happen, is that they're going to be uncomfortable, right? If you're moving to a new city, you're not familiar with the people, you're not familiar with the lay of the land. You're still using navigation to get around, to get from one location to the other. But in the big picture, moving through that change and refusing to tell yourself no is what helps us overcome that. Those, to me, Brian, are called courageous acts. Like, courageously, I'll move through this, even though it feels uncertain. Not because I don't think this is what I should be doing, just because it's uncomfortable. It's not normal. And if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of the premise behind it. Certainly being told no will happen to us all. Mm-hmm. But refuse to tell yourself no, and that's giving up on yourself. So how do we know when to say no? Or how do we know when it's time to move on? I think that was the other question, that the second part of the question that you asked.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So in moving and getting to the yes, that's what I say. Get to the yes. But again, it's still. I think it goes back to having and creating this level of vision, right? So this process that consists of time, success, and failure, right? Successes and failure is all part of it, right? It's all part of the process, right? But I've learned to use those failures as a stepping stones, to reach new levels, because the setbacks will happen, right? They're going to happen. But each of those obstacles will help, what's helping us build resilience to become this person that we desire. And I think everyone right now in this moment is probably juggling the fact of, is it time to pivot away from what they're doing? We're in a pandemic, and people are stuck. They're feeling stuck, and so they want to move out of feeling stuck into becoming more successful, creating more vitality, living with more purpose, creating bigger impact. Again, I think that a lot of that too, Brian, is this level of visualization, and sometimes it's simply seeking counsel. Maybe asking someone, to give you some expert opinion. Again, this is your accountability circle of the people that you can trust to help you visualize what this path looks like for making good decisions and minimizing mistakes. But yeah, in this global pandemic, I think we're all forced to kind of dive deep into this level of understanding of clarity for the self first, and then moving through that, moving the steps and outlining those steps, and maybe identifying the people to help me get there, but not looking at those losses and failures as saying no as a loss or
got it.
Yeah.
Interesting. And that might be kind of a good transition here to come full circle. You have a chapter in your book, Pivot to Win. The title is From Millionaire to Solitaire. Can you talk a little bit of what's inside that chapter? Because how prime is that for this time where so many people are feeling like they're confined, they're literally quarantined. They might have been working in a restaurant, they lost their job now. There's just so much going on. Does that chapter speak to today's pandemic at all, or is that just a coincidence?
Absolutely. Millionaire solitaire, but that was me, who felt like I had it all, what I share in the book, Pivot to Win, was, one of the biggest things. I mean, that was a huge challenge for me, pushing away from the NFL and finally being able to accept that. Acceptance, Brian's key word. because even though we're moved on from a relationship physically, maybe we haven't accepted what that change is. And again, that's another way of continuing to remain stuck. And it's a dangerous place. We talked about the mental component of where people are through this pandemic. Some are thriving, but some are struggling because, again, if you're an extrovert, you're kind of ready to go see people, and you're kind of ready to be around other people. But for us introverts, and we're thriving. But to go from millionaire to solitaire felt like I was being kicked out of the tribe. I was no longer there. I was no longer wanted. I was and here I was in this psychological downward spiral of I'm not good enough. I'm looking at other players and other people who are in the position that I once was, with no level of understanding of how did that person get there, and I'm not there. So we can start to go through this negative cycle of trapping ourselves to believe that we're not good enough to at whatever level. I mean, again, people are pivoting all the time. I think it's more than anything, people are consistently looking for new opportunities. And people are looking for opportunities to pivot away from their current situation and circumstance. So having a better understanding of that, getting clarity around, those triggers of how I was in that moment, and then what I can do to help mitigate the downward spiral of those negative thoughts. I talk about that in the book. And when I say a true sense of vulnerability, I wouldn't call it a depression, but it certainly felt like it. And many athletes struggle when having to pivot away from football. And I can only speak from the NFL side when transitioning away from football. It's so violent, and again, I think there's a whole different conversation about the brain and what studies are out there around CTE and being able to really be in tune with understanding yourself when moving away and experiencing those change. But again, it can have a negative effect, and if we're not careful, if we're not careful and we're not aware of and understanding what puts us in that downward spiral of negative thought, it can be dangerous and sometimes requires clinical help.
Got it. Yeah. So it's from that chapter's alluding to more of the mental standpoint. I was curious because I have had other athletes on the show that speak to it in the financial sense, that they went from the millions to, following the path of Mike Tyson to literally losing all of it. So that wasn't your scenario. Yours was more of the mental aspect of finding yourself post football.
Well, but there's both. I mean, there's that's a component. That's a component of it too. When you have nearly 80% of NFL players who pivot away from the game of football within 2 years are experiencing financial hardships. Wow. You're like, wow. How did someone who made all of these millions of dollars get themselves into a financial jam like that? And every situation is different, but I could again, I go back and pinpoint to this young Jordan Babineaux at 20 years old who really didn't have a complete understanding of money. Or you got many financial advisors or people who have these great quick get rich quick schemes that people end up being Ponzi schemes, and people end up losing a lot of money. You got all of these scams and these relationships that you have to navigate around. Who's truthful about bringing back a 20% return on your dollar? Mm-hmm. Right? Is that
you hear some lofty guarantees?
Now you understand what I'm saying. Those are the things. Those are the things that that every day professional athletes have to manage. So
and were you a saver? Like, were you inclined to save and entertain those investment ideas, or
no?
Were you just more like, hell, I'm going to spend my money?
No, man. That's like, man, I'll spend it before I get it. I'm like, wow, is that the new Maserati? I'll take one in white. But it was, I say that jokingly, but yeah, there was a level of maturity that I had to grow into while understanding all of that, you know. And when you're doing it solely, not when you're doing it solely, or you kind of have a lack of understanding, or you have no clarity of what success looks like. How do you know when you get it? If I can't identify what success looks like in my work, or if I can't identify what success looks like in my relationships, success looks like in my finances, how do I know when I got it? Like, how do I know if I'm successful or not? Right. So we look externally for all of these different measurements of success. Oh, well, I thought success was a nice car, a nice house, and, a table at the, in Las Vegas, or a trip to, with the fellas, to Mexico, or whatever it was. Like we start to look in the wrong places to identify success, when essentially we don't have our own core understanding what success looks like. So that's a great exercise that I think too, and trying to get clarity around where we are in this new year of 2021, though we're just 32 days into it. What does a successful 2021 looks like, considering what the hell we just experienced in 2020?
Exactly.
And I think we have, I think we should each take time to kind of understand what that is in our own lives, in all of our areas. Yeah,
definitely. And fortunately, I mean, you had a pretty lengthy career in the NFL at about 10 years. They say it stands for not for long. A lot of guys don't have that chance where if they blew the money quickly, that might be it. They don't have more years of that big salary to catch up on. So that's it seems like it all worked out, which is good. So if we could, maybe we can transition to wrap up here to what we call the lightning round, which is we just fire a couple quick questions at you just to get to know you better. So if you're okay with that, we just have a few questions here that a lot of our listeners do appreciate.
Okay, fire away.
All righty, cool. So what was your favorite vacation?
Oh man, Carnival in Trinidad.
Oh wow, how'd you end up down there? Was that? Maybe that's a whole other story.
Oh, Brian, I'm married now.
All right, we'll let that one be.
Well, yeah. Oh man.
Maybe I shouldn't have said vacation. Maybe I should have said destination.
Yeah. It was kind of one of those to-do list those little bucket list items, that I wanted to do, and my brothers and I, we went out and experienced it. So it's fun.
Good for you. Cool. And in that same vein, what's your favorite food?
I'm from the South, so I would, instead of favorite food, can I give you a cuisine? Is that okay?
Okay, that's fine.
All right, Cajun, anything Cajun, right? So the etouffees, the gumbos, the red beans and rice,
Gotcha.
Fried catfish, po' boys, New Orleans, Texas style cooking.
Not barbecue?
I would say second. Yeah,
okay,
for sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I've been to Texas a few times, and the barbecue,
absolutely.
The barbecue and the Mexican food is what I fell in love with.
Yeah.
And then great career in the NFL. Who was the hardest player that you ever had to tackle?
Oh my goodness, you want one of them? I've got a list of them.
If you could narrow it down.
Man, hardest person to tackle, I would say Steven Jackson. I'll give it to Steven Jackson. Okay. It's probably close between him and Frank Gore. Frank Gore, I made his highlight tape a couple of times. But both, Frank Gore is a future Hall of Fame. Steven Jackson, he went on to have a great career too. Steven Jackson played with the Rams. Frank Gore played with the 49ers before moving around.
He's still playing, isn't he?
That's what I'm saying. He just finished his 16th season or 17th season, man. The guy's nonstop, man. But I would say.
And it was wild because my brother went to the University of Miami, and he was there the same time Gore was there. And Gore seemed to be injured quite a bit in college, as good as he was. So to see how long he's lasted now in the NFL, that's awesome.
Yeah, remarkable.
Yeah, it really is. And then, of course, this is a show that we do incorporate some money and finance. If you could pin down maybe one of the best investments you ever made, anything come to mind?
The best investment I made was investing in my personal growth and development. Yeah, investing in myself, and it's the reason that I went back to school. It's the reason that I seek out. I still seek coaching, yep. So I'd say the best investment was investing in me.
Got it. And conversely, maybe the worst investment, something you wish you just never got involved with.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of business decisions, failed businesses that I've had in the past, learning those early lessons. One was a food chain restaurant in Houston that lasted two and a half, 3 years, and never really got going into anything successful. The other one I would say is luxury cars. I mean, you buy a damn luxury car, you pull it out of the lot, and now they are depreciating assets, but now you're upside down in it. So there were some lessons, financial lessons in that. Worst investments, I would say, was luxury cars. And I would say that worst investment was a business, but because you learned so much from it, but it ended up failing. So.
Got it. Okay. And we talked a little bit about your habits, your bookends in the day. In that same school of thought, how much do you try and sleep at night?
Oh man, my sleep patterns they vary, and to be honest with you, I don't have a consistent sleep pattern. But if I get 5 hours, 6 hours, I'm good to go.
Okay, wow, good. And growing up, now looking back, you were an NFL star, but did you always want to be that? And in that idea, who was maybe a hero that you could point to when you were a kid?
Yeah. So so this is quick hitting. I'm sorry, I won't get into this story too deep, but yes. So my brother and I had this early desire and passion to want to grow into professional football players. But I would say I was very close to becoming like I said, my initial major was computer science. I was coding in high school. I was writing programs in high school. So in high school, in the 10th grade, I created a hangman program. I pivoted. I don't know. I graduated in high school in 2000. And so, the late 90s, I was into programming. This was like when computer programming language was BASIC and C++. Now, if anyone who's into coding now understands the old computer language, BASIC and C++ was one of two of the first type of coding back in when internet and this boom of programming was just starting to surface. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
and then I would say Jerry Rice was
okay.
Probably my favorite athlete growing up. And here I bring it back full circle. I was Jerry Rice's teammate. And people don't know he had a little stop here in Seattle. I don't know, must have been year 27 or however many years he played in the NFL. But
I forgot that
Jerry,
Did Seattle cut him, or didn't he go to the Broncos maybe at the very end?
He played with the Broncos as well. But Jerry, I got a chance to be on the same roster with the greatest of all time.
Wow, and that is so cool.
Yeah, it really was.
That's awesome. And maybe the last one we have time for here. What's your favorite movie of all time?
Oh, wow, these are tough. My favorite movie of all time. Oh man, there's so many. Gosh, Brian, you would do
maybe
that
top
to me.
3 or
that is the hot
one
seat
that comes to mind.
So I'll share this one because in college, when I was still envisioning what the NFL was and what the NFL looked like, I used to watch Any Given Sunday every Friday, and it was probably more entertainment than it was an actual insight to what the actual NFL was. But I used to watch Any Given Sunday every Friday before my college games on Saturday. I guess I was just into it. I don't know.
Yeah, that speech by Al Pacino in the locker room, that is one of the greatest in movie history in my mind.
The inches that we need are all around us.
Yeah, it gives you chills.
Yeah,
it's a good one. That was awesome. And Jordan, anything else that you want to share with our fans and our listeners here of what's next on your agenda? You're doing so many awesome things. if you could just point to what's coming up for the
Yeah,
future.
absolutely, Brad. Thanks for thanks for having me. It was fun conversation. I hope hope your listeners had a chance to get some valuable insights and some great takeaways from the time that we spent together. But I just like to share with everyone that you can look me up on all of the social media platforms as at Jordan Babineaux, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and be looking out for the book Pivot to Win. It's releasing. The ebook is pre-sale right now on Amazon. You can go to the website pivottowin.com. You can join the Pivot community. I'd love to continue the conversation and find out more about you guys and how you're pivoting and ways that I can continue to help and provide impact and value to each of you. So greatly appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you for coming on. And I know you dodged it a little at the beginning, but who you got this Sunday? Who's taking home the Lombardi?
I think they're going back to back. I'm picking Kansas City to win the Super Bowl. But I do think it was a great season what the Bucs were able to do. I mean, the first team in NFL history to play the Super Bowl in their home stadium, and of course led by the greatest quarterback of all time, and Tom Brady.
Yeah, it should be a good one. Well, Jordan, thank you again for coming on the show. I think this was a fantastic conversation with plenty of takeaways for all of our listeners out there. So once again, thank you very much for making the time.
Okay, you got it, Brian. Anytime.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today with Jordan Babineaux. Please let us know what you thought of it. Shoot us an email anytime at thekadernapodcast@gmail.com. Leave us a review wherever you're listening or watching on YouTube. And we can't wait to see you next week. Take care.